Howdy ho, cutie pies. I'm just stopping by to remind you that a single slice of cheese is absolutely not enough food to fuel you for the day. And no, coffee is not a replacement for a meal. Welcome to the Busy Bee with ADHD podcast, a podcast about tools and strategies for ADHD, all while laughing at my very dumb but plump ass, Haley Honeyman. I'm an ADHD coach and influencer with the goal of helping my fellow ADHD pals. Let's get into it. All right, so you might have guessed, but today we're talking about food and ADHD. Honestly, probably one of the most frequently brought up topics around ADHD with the clients I have and with the people that I know that have ADHD. So you might have thought to yourself, why, oh why, tummy, do you have so many problems? When really, the problem is probably your ADHD, and that's what we're going to find out today. So I'm going to do a big watch out for this episode, aka trigger warning for eating disorders. Perhaps you're surprised that I need to make this warning, but the reality is eating disorders are regularly identified in folks with ADHD due to impulse control and inattention. Myself included. I've struggled with food my entire life. I was bulimic at 14 and have gone through phases of restricted eating or forgetful eating or purposely not eating. In university, I would remember I needed to eat because I would be sick or dizzy from lack of eating over such crazy periods of time. So I started to rebuild that relationship with food, but it took a long time and it is absolutely nowhere near where it needs to be. My main problem with food right now is binge eating. I'll eat a meal or two throughout the day, but come the night, I shapeshift into what feels like a ravenous beast, just tearing through anything in my pantry, including, but not limited to, marshmallows, crackers, and cheese, chips, M&Ms, cereal, and in low moments, I'll even just slam down like an entire family-sized portion of a lasagna that I meant to save to eat over more than one day, but ended up just doing it in one sitting. But enough about me. Binge eating disorders affect around 3.5% of women and 2% of men in the US, according to Robert Oliveira, a clinical psychologist from Harvard Medical School. So Oliveira also suggests that ADHD folks with binge eating disorder often eat large amounts of food quickly, even when they're full, though they do not purge the food by throwing it up or through excessive exercise. Experts believe that people with ADHD may overeat to satisfy their brain's need for stimulation. Also, problems with executive function can make self-control and self-regulation difficult. I mean, this hits home for me. I don't know about you. I can't even imagine the number of times I've eaten because I'm bored and not because I am hungry. It's almost embarrassing, but at the same time, it's so extremely common amongst ADHD people that realistically, there's nothing to be embarrassed about. I don't think I've ever talked to an ADHD person who has a fully healthy relationship with food or has never struggled with food in the past. But just like all other ADHD symptoms, difficulties with eating can be treated using tools and strategies. Now, eating disorders are complicated, and I do want to make it super clear that oftentimes treatment requires a team of people on your side. This may mean a psychologist, nutritionist, physician, psychiatrist, and oftentimes a therapist or a coach of some sort. When someone has an eating disorder and ADHD, treating the disorder through the ADHD lens is essential. Not managing your ADHD symptoms often leads to failure in treatment, which is why it's so important to seek treatment that involves discussions of ADHD. Because realistically, ADHD and eating disorders is a lot different than eating disorders without ADHD. If you're looking for help in this area, I do want to give you access to that. So in the bio of this episode, whether you're on YouTube or Spotify, I'll make sure to link some options for you. Now, I'm going to ask you a question, and I want you to answer this honestly. What does food do for me? Why do I eat? A year ago, I would have answered very differently than how I would answer now. I used to view food as a survival method. I knew I needed food, so I would just eat as a means of surviving. At that time, the problem, mainly with my relationship with food, was the fact that I would forget to eat completely and then binge later. I would binge because by the end of the day, I was starving. My stomach hurt, and I needed to get something in my system to keep moving. It was really just out of necessity. And I know a lot of people struggle with this aspect of eating too, completely forgetting to do it, right? And I think this comes back to our question. Why do you eat? Why do we eat? I've started to shift my mindset in this area because eating out of necessity didn't mean I could enjoy the food. ADHD brains are interest-based, right? Which means we do things out of interest. This is why you can hyperfixate on a video game or book for hours on end, but the idea of spending just 5 minutes getting food might sound impossible to us. You're simply just not interested in that process. So learning to build interest around it may be the best step for you, which in my case it was, but I needed to first give myself really easy options. I am a person that struggles from decision fatigue, and I struggle when there are too many options, and food and cooking is often that. So I built what is called the 3-tier list. I know, fancy fucking name. I made it myself. The general idea is that instead of having so many decisions to make when thinking about food, all you have to do is understand how you're feeling to decide what to eat. So tier 1. This is the no thank you kind of day. On this particular type of day, you do not feel like you have any effort whatsoever to put forwards to eating and food. You're uninterested, you're unmotivated, and you do not want to think about food. So our solution is giving yourself the easiest meals possible. So for me, that was microwavable meals that didn't make me shit my guts out. So that fancy ass Amy's shit, which, while a little bit more expensive, was delicious, and it gave me more interest in eating. So for each tier, I really ensure that I have just a few options. So for tier 1, it was microwavable meals, cereal, or healthier takeout options like Subway. This took away a lot of the decision fatigue that can come with food, especially on days when I'm super unmotivated. All I have to do is say, how am I feeling about food today? Well, I feel really unmotivated and I don't want to have to think about it. Well, I only have these few options, which is I can either get takeout, I can either have my microwavable meal, or I can have cereal. Which one sounds most appealing? Do that one. Tier 2 is the I'm willing to try kind of day. On this type of day, you've got slight motivation and you're willing to put small effort into your food. For example, this was avocado toast for me. Delicious. I had enough effort to slice up some avocado, some cheese, throw in some spices on a piece of gluten-free bread because my tummy hates me, and bam, a delicious meal. For tier 2, my options usually consisted of avocado toast, peanut butter sandwiches, or a pasta of some sort, even like Annie's, for example. Finally, tier 3 is all about major motivation. These days were very few and far between for me when I first started this process. I would hardly ever have these days, and that is okay. When I started mending my relationship with food, my goal wasn't about increasing my time in the kitchen. It was about increasing my interest in cooking, and that meant fixing my perception around making food. So while I stayed at tier 1 for months and months and months, I began moving more frequently through to tier 2 and 3 as my relationship with food got better. So for tier 3, I would do really fun meals that took some effort, but I really loved them. So like a chicken stir fry or a delicious stew that I would make from scratch. And again, the goal with these tiers is to increase your frequency of eating. So if you're only eating tier 1 meals for a while, that's okay. Some food as an energy source will always be better than no food. So I want to start trying to switch your thinking. Why do I eat? I can now answer that question by saying, because I love eating. I find joy in cooking where in the past I have hated it. I will say it took me a few months of eating microwavable meals until I got to a place where my interest was high enough to do tier 2 and 3 meals. But now I'm mainly on tier 2 and 3 meals and hardly ever on tier 1. And actually the idea of eating microwavable meals anymore is kind of disgusting. I really, really enjoy the process of making my own food now because I mended my interest around the topic. So now I always love to answer questions from folks in the community. And today I was live on Journey to ADHD, which if you don't know, it's an ADHD community I co-own with the amazing Matt Rakelboom, my bestest friend. There's a lot of resources there and I love going live, doing nonsense like face painting, which I did a few weeks ago while live. But anyways, enough about me plugging my own shit. I had the question asked by Stephanie Bernard, and she asked, how do I remember to eat? Because of course, the 3-tier system can only work if you first remember to eat periodically throughout the day. For some ADHD folks, having an eating schedule can be super essential. This means sticking to a plan, such as eating breakfast every day prior to leaving the house for work or starting work. What I do is I habit chunk my breakfast with walking my dog. Because I walk my dog every single day, when I come home, I know the first task that I need to complete is making breakfast or grabbing breakfast, because some mornings I'm simply just not hungry. So I might grab like a granola bar to get something in my system, but only as a means of solidifying my routine. I could very easily skip breakfast on those days, but I want to keep that routine consistent. So I'll just grab something quick and easy. So you can block these times in your calendar if you were a time-sensitive person, and you can set notifications pushed to your phone every day as well. So, maybe you get a reminder every day at 9 a.m. that says breakfast time. But for me, that does not work. I found habit chunking an essential part of eating. So, for example, I do love to eat my dinner after I have partook in the devil's lettuce. Naughty, naughty girl I am. So I like to smoke in the evening when it's dark out, so I'll pair the activities. To smoke, I need to first make dinner so that when I'm done smoking, I will be able to eat it. But I'm also working on cutting down my use of cannabis, so I'll also pair it with the habit of sitting on the couch after work. I actually unplug my TV every single day in the morning and plug in a light that I use for filming in the same outlet during my workday. So before I can plug my TV back in after work, when I want to sit down, relax, chill out, I need to make dinner first and sit down with it. It's just like an extra block to remind me to eat. And I found this super motivating to remember to eat, and it doesn't rely on me consuming a very naughty substance. So to answer your question, Stephanie, create an eating schedule, either using a time-based system and reminders, or habit chunk the task of eating with other daily habits. Now, another question I hear a lot is how to avoid binge eating. Even if you have a clear schedule in place, you might be eating way more than necessary or eating past the point of being full. And I am totally a victim to this. I do that all the time. And when it comes to binge eating, I've found that the most effective way for myself, again, there are tons of other options, but I'm speaking from a point of opinion, I've found that portion control is a very helpful part of my eating habits. So I created a rule for myself. What I grab is what I eat. Meaning when I put food on my plate, whatever is there is all I'm going to eat. I don't go back for seconds until I have allowed myself time between eating to ensure my brain can register if I'm full or not. For example, I made this delicious HelloFresh meal, which this is not sponsored, but hey, you never know. And it comes with 2 portions for this meal. But I'm sad and alone, so I only need the first portion. So I put that first portion on my plate, I put everything else in the fridge, and I grabbed myself my quote-unquote treat for after my meal, my dessert of some sort, and then I head to my eating space wherever that is. So what I have in front of me is what I will eat. I eat that while watching a show or doing work or whatever, and then I put my plate down. If I feel as though another portion would be nice, I force myself to wait. I sit for another episode or another video or another 10 minutes, and I give myself time to process, because sometimes I'm just hungrier than normal and I don't want to avoid eating enough, but I also want to ensure that I'm not eating out of boredom or habit. I'm eating out of hunger, and that tends to be my problem with binge eating, is that I'm doing it because I'm bored. Another thing I've started to do is that when I do feel that urge to eat afterwards. Let's say I finish that portion of my dinner, but I'm still a little bit hungry, but I don't necessarily want to eat a full another portion of that food, is I've given myself fair alternatives. For example, I have diverted to popcorn as a really good option for me. Popcorn is very low calorie. It feels nice. It gives me something to do, and it'll fill me up just the last little bit, but I won't feel so bad about myself the next day. Whereas if I go through a giant family-sized pack of Doritos, I'm going to feel like shit, right? So popcorn has been a really good substitute for those cravings. I also find that putting that quote after meal treat on my plate before I start eating is helpful too. So when I put my dinner on my plate, I also grab my little treat or, a piece of sugar, because it's helpful to avoid purging my pantry later on because I didn't satisfy my sweet tooth. So I give myself that opportunity to do that. A lovely member of Journey to ADHD also mentioned an amazing trip. This is from Anya, I believe, said, I saw a hack for veggies, which consists of putting them on the door of the fridge, on the sauce racks, and put the sauces in the veggie drawer. I thought it was clever. And I love this suggestion. This way you're forced to look at your fresh foods every time you open the fridge. So I really wanted to mention that tool because I know a big struggle that I deal with as well is things going bad in my fridge. So ensuring that the things that do go bad or the first thing that you see in your fridge will be very, very helpful. So thank you for that tip and thanks for sending that my way. Now, as we wrap up today's episode, I do want to remind you how important it is to eat. Okay, listen to me. I'm giving you a big hug and I'm yelling this in your ear. Your body is doing unbelievable things every day. And food and water are your fuel to doing that and succeeding. But I also know how hard it can be to start the transition between a bad relationship with food to an okay one. Hey, I'm still working on it too. So my challenge for you today is this. Pick what your 3 tiers consist of. Your tier 1, the no way Jose day, the day that you need a little bit of wiggle room, an easy meal. Tier 2, where you're like, meh, I've got a little bit of energy. And tier 3, where you're like, fuck yeah, I'm having a party and I'm gonna cook. Write them out and put them on your fridge or on your mirror, wherever it is that you can see them every single day as a reminder. And also, give yourself a big stinking hug. You fucking rock and you're a cutie. And if nobody has told you today, I am so proud of you. Okay. I love you so much and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. See you in the next episode. Bye.